Welcome. Oh,
Hey.
does not know. And there are two of you who need to introduce yourself. So what you don't know is that we started a little bit early because we're so thrilled to have Miles' family here. Miles is one of our students. He's they're never coming back after what I putting him on the spot. But I thought it would be fun to have everyone introduce themselves to them and sort of, and then indirectly to everyone else. So I'll start with Professor John.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wang, I'm a professor in ITS and civil environment engineering. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you. I am Rakib. I am a UNIS student here.
Okay.
No ideas.
Yeah.
And he is the happiest person I ever met. Not only does he have a hot pot in his office,
Oh, wow.
but he also appreciates Funyuns as much as I
Oh,
do.
wow.
So, yeah, special spot for him. And Professor Brownski, I know you're going to be introducing someone, so I thought you would introduce yourself at that point. So I thought I'd save you that opportunity. So I'm Vicki de Guzman. I'm the Assistant Director for Programs and Engagement here. I've been running this program for several years, and this is so exciting and so fun to see the culmination of our undergrad and high school researchers projects. And as Eamon and I were sharing earlier, can you imagine where we'd all be if we knew about research in high school or as an undergrad? I mean, many of us picked it up later in life. And so we're really thrilled to share the exciting opportunities and the discovery of knowledge. I know I personally look at every object we have differently now, knowing that it was built on research, right? And then we build. So an interesting thing that, by the way, for those of you who have not been involved much in research, one of the things you might hear the students talk about is a literature review. And essentially what that means is finding out where we are, it's the state of the world. We build on facts. So research is so important. Wouldn't have much of anything we have, in my opinion, without it. So greatly appreciate all of you, all the students who were involved, all of the faculty and grad students who mentored them. And I'm going to turn the time over now to one of our grad students who mentored students and is serving as our host, and will also be giving you sort of a keynote on his research after the other students have presented. Okay? Rita.
Thank you, Vicky.
Hi everyone, my name is Jitun. As I mentioned, I'm a fourth year PhD student. Welcome to ITS Emerging Scholars Showcase. We have an excellent set of presenters today. Our presenters for today will be, let me read the names from here. Sorry for my Erin Bosher, advised by Professor Highland, Miles Shaffie, advised by Professor Borowski, Reina Kabbara, advised by Dr. Yu, then Tim Wang, advised by Dr. Highland, and Carissa Kelly by Professor Borowski. So I would like to call our first presenter, Erin Bosher. If okay.
Hello. Yes, that's me. I'm behind you. Yeah. Hello, everyone. My apologies for having to join in a virtual format. I wasn't able to get time off of work, but I'm so thankful to be joining all of you here. I've had the opportunity to meet so many ITS staff and students, and I've got to hear all about your research, doing interviews and communications work. So now you finally get to hear about mine. So I'm very excited to be presenting to you today. And yeah. The PowerPoint, would you like me to share it on my end?
Yes, please share your screen.
Sure. One moment, please.
Does she need the ability to share?
Yes, I might need permissions to share. It's looking like that.
While they're doing that, let me tell you a little bit about Erin. Erin just recently graduated and started a new job with Jamboree Housing. Erin, before you start, maybe you could tell us just a little bit about what you're doing. The other thing that she did this summer that I wanted to share with you is she led our communications efforts this summer. She created all the spotlights you see on our website. She interviewed students for them. She's continuing on a little bit doing that, and we're really grateful for that. She has an interesting educational background too. So Erin, throw in a little bit about your education, okay?
Sure, yeah, I am definitely not the fit for research right off the bat. This is my first time presenting research as well, but I'm so thankful to have this opportunity. I started doing literary journalism and I was commuting from the Inland Empire to UC Irvine every day for a couple years. And it gets really old really quickly, as I'm sure many of you can relate to. So I wanted to be a part of that change. I got really, really sick of being on the freeway, and I thought there's got to be something I can do to at least educate myself about the issue and see what role I might have in fixing it. And so I picked up an urban studies major and I really learned about where highways come from, how we are where we are today, about inequities and gaps in accessibility. And that led me to some roles at Caltrans I've worked at. I've done some research there. And then I've also done research in housing because everything starts at home, right? So now I'm working at an affordable housing developer like Dr. de Guzman introduced. And I really love my work. It's a lot of fun and it's very rewarding. And we believe in a housing first philosophy. And if you haven't heard of that, California is really big on housing first. It means housing that is not conditional, is not dependent on sobriety, just focusing on harm reduction and getting people into homes. So I kind of have my foot in both ponds here, but today I'm going to be talking about quantifying accessibility benefits from small scale mobility investments, which is a mouthful, but we'll be able to break it down. Okay, so first things first, a little project overview. This project is an agreement between CARB and UC Irvine. My advisors for the project were Dr. Michael Hyland, Dr. Elisa Borowski, and Dr. Tenjeeb. What is this project addressing and what is the gap? So number one, there isn't a standardized measurement of accessibility. Without a standardized way of measuring accessibility, there's no way of knowing who's benefiting from small scale mobility investments and who they're best serving and how it can be improved upon. And we also don't know the value of local scale improvements. So what was the project plan? The plan was to, number one, develop a framework to evaluate activity and access. The framework developed is a survey, and it asked riders about their perceived access, but we'll talk more about that in depth in the coming slides. The next step was to develop a model that could turn our survey responses into quantitative data. And then the third step was to evaluate the outcomes according to demographics, i.e. race, gender, income, employment status, to find gaps in equity and access. So in essence, to determine who small scale mobility investments are serving and who they're overlooking. So the goal of the project was number one, to provide an evaluation tool for state leaders to measure equity and access. And then number two, determine the value of small scale mobility investments. Okay, so introducing the Bayview Shuttle and the survey. So the Bayview Shuttle is an example of small scale mobility investments in San Francisco. It operates Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. It provides important connections to places like the Caltrain station, the hospital, the BART station. Rides can be booked through the phone or app. It's wheelchair accessible, and there's a few languages provided. So that's a rundown of the Bayview Shuttle. It's essentially our case study to measuring access. So what types of questions did we ask Bayview Shuttle survey riders? For starters, we asked demographic questions. We asked open-ended questions, but primarily we asked them to rank their levels of satisfaction, ease, and preference, both with and without the shuttle. Respondents selected their level of agreement to these statements, assessing satisfaction, ease, and preference, and their level of agreement ranged from 1, which is strongly disagree, to 5, strongly agree. Okay, so when it comes to analyzing results, the first thing we did was clean data. So that means removing incomplete survey responses. And number two, I next had to use RStudio, which there was a learning curve. But then I ran a script that Dr. Borowski provided. And then the third step was to run the mimic model, which is multiple causes, multiple indicators, multiple causes model, regression analysis. And this helped us understand what variables significantly impact perceived access, so like gender, race, income. And then finally, we computed the change in perceived sense of access before and after using the Bayview shuttle. All right, so now what everyone's been waiting for. Oh, I'm sorry about that. My printer was readjusting, but anyways, results. We noticed a few trends from the data as modeled in this diagram by Dr. Borowski. For starters, women reported a lower perceived accessibility than men. This was most likely due to safety concerns. Larger households reported higher accessibility gains, and this is most likely due to the cheap cost of group travel or limited car access. And then overall, the Bayview shuttle is providing greater access to those who were formerly limited in mobility. So yay, it's doing what it was meant to do. It's important to note, however, that this survey was tested on a very small sample size of people. So these results are incredibly preliminary and would require further research. What we do know is that this survey, the framework, has done a good job of measuring access, which is what we wanted it to do. Okay, so there's a lot going on this, but I'll break it down. So ZOTGPT data synthesis for open-ended questions. The survey asked various open-ended questions, asking people what the Bayview shuttle could be doing differently and what it's doing well. It asked riders about their desired additional destinations as well. So to analyze these results, my advisors had me use ZOTGPT for data synthesis. Now there's an upside to it. ZOTGPT was able to notice trends and feedback and present it in a digestible manner. But the downside is ZOTGPT overaccounts. One response might be over-exaggerated and inaccurately representing the general population. And that's an issue just kind of with all AI synthesis is overgeneralization. But anyways, this is how it interpreted the open-ended questions to our survey responses. Some of the good things: there's been improved access for seniors, people with disability, and people without cars. It has connections to key destinations, including BART, healthcare, shopping centers. But there is room for improvement. There's long and unpredictable wait times. There's vehicle design issues and limited service coverage. And then there's been some equity concerns noted for isolated communities, people struggling with affordability, and people with disabilities. So we definitely have an understanding of where the access gaps exist and what can be improved upon. And that was the idea behind the survey. So in conclusion, our project was successful in developing a framework to measure access. The model my team created successfully evaluates the outcome according to demographics to find gaps in equity and access. The Bayview shuttle itself is improving access for San Francisco's neighborhood, but there's clear room for improvement thanks to the assessment provided. But moving forward from here, it's going to be a lot of kind of repeating that process and testing things to make sure they're sure. And yeah, that was just the small role that I played in it, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Erin. So congratulations. And let's open it up for questions and discussion. I'll start. Erin, what did you like best about this research project?
I like that it was completely out of my comfort zone, which was a lot of fun. I think at first it was challenging to figure out softwares like RStudio was definitely tough for me. Which is not something I was predicting, but I think that research really teaches you how to deal with those learning curves. And my advisors were very helpful with that. And I think it gave me a key insight into how things around me are working. Like you said earlier, is when I see a new project developed, I know that there's tons of research behind it. So just knowing that I was a part of the ins and outs of the future of transportation in California was definitely my favorite part.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Comments?
So,
Professor Jin?
yeah, Erin, thank you very much for the excellent presentation. And I have one question regarding the data synthesis. And you mentioned about some I forgot about the details. So can you talk a little bit more about, how you use GPT to synthesize the data?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So basically, we took all of the open ended questions and had ZotGPT create kind of a data synthesis and a feedback for what are people saying, where are their needs needing to be met. And one of the things I noticed was there was an overgeneralization that kind of made these answers, the ZotGPT's analysis kind of unreliable. And that an example of that overgeneralization is we had one person respond about wanting drivers to be trained so they would know how to take car seats in and out easier, or that maybe they might have the safety laps cross over them. But that was only one response. However, ZotGPT kind of interpreted that response as the general public opinion. So it took me going back to read each individual response to say, hey, is this really a concern that everyone's experiencing or just a limited group of people? So that's kind of the overgeneralization I was mentioning. When it comes to specifics and open-ended questions, I know that it might be hard to go through every single one by one, but I think that it's best that we're aware that maybe they might overgeneralize. Just especially working with limited amounts of data. Our sample size was only 62, so that's also probably a reason why it was overgeneralized.
Well, thank you very much for the clarification. And actually, I have one follow-up question. Maybe this is I don't know if you guys have thought about it. The GPT large language models can be used to, to create a synthetic data to generate, new data based on, the small survey, small sample size. I'm wondering, have you guys thought about it or done some literature review on other efforts, basically to create kind of artificial agents that can answer some questions, to generate new answers?
Right. As far as me personally, I have not read much into that option and I haven't explored it. I'm sure it's something that Dr. Michael Hyland and Dr. Eliza Borowski are very aware of and probably considering. Just speaking from what I know about the survey, we're measuring access and ensure this group could reflect what everyone else is feeling about access. But I worry about modeling anything from the demographic we surveyed just based on the fact that it was 62 people. I think if we were going to create perhaps a generalization model, we would need to base it off of maybe more people, but that's kind of out of my expertise reach, and I'm not sure how accurate these models might be. But yeah, it's definitely something to consider and worth thinking about. So thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Erin, for your heroic effort to join us. Congratulations on your new job.
Thank you.
Love your bulletin board behind you. It's very
Oh, it's full. Yeah, got a lot of events.
Thank you. That's wonderful. All right, so Erin, I'm going to invite you to stay as long as you can. We understand that you probably need to drop off and go to work. And Rita will introduce our next speaker.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Rita will introduce our next speaker's advisor, who will introduce our next speaker. Or I can do the transition. Professor Borowski will introduce our next speaker, and I specifically asked her not to introduce herself earlier so that she can give us her full introduction in the spotlight she deserves.
Okay, well, I'll start with myself. I don't know who our next speaker is.
It's Miles.
Oh, Miles,
It's
thank
Miles.
you. You are. I can't tell you apart. Okay. I'm Professor Borowski. I'm an assistant professor here in civil and environmental engineering. I started a little over 2 years ago. I was hired through the Black Thriving Initiative. My research focuses on infrastructure equity, public health impacts of transportation, and disaster resilience. So this is my first time working with a high school intern. Miles did a fantastic job and has set the bar very high for all future high school interns that I work with. So thank you, Miles, for all your hard work. So Miles Shaffie, I'm pleased to introduce, is a senior, correct, at Donna Hills High School. And he helped us out with our UCI-UCLA collaboration on using large language models for racial equity analysis of the LA 2028 mobility investments. And my PhD student, Montana, played a really large role in mentoring and leading this project as well. So I want to give him credit for that. So Miles, thank you so much for all your hard work, and we're excited to see your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so welcome, thank you for coming. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience in working on the LA Metro 28 by 28 project research team. As Dr. Borowski said, I'm Miles Shaffie. I'm a senior at Dana Hills High School, and I'm an aspiring civil engineer. Okay, so in our project, we used large language models to analyze the citizens' feedback on the LA Metro 28 by 28 projects. Simultaneously, we were looking into seeing how effective the usage of large language models is in research applications like this. Listed here, I have some of my team members. I would just like to give a shout out to Dr. Borowski in Montana. They were great leaders who cultivated an amazing team that I'm really grateful to have been a part of. I really felt like I could go to them if I had any questions or anything like that. Okay, so the key findings from our research, we did find large language models to be effective in research applications like this, as they saved us a lot of time, a lot of like the tedious tasks, like reading all these comments from social media posts and all these long documents. All we had to do was give it to ChatGPT or the other large language models that we used, and it did it very fast, efficient, and effective. So large language models are a tool that should definitely be taken advantage of. And then also, social media is a great resource to get the citizens' feedback on projects like this, because it eliminates any bias. The people that are commenting on social media are doing it solely because they're passionate about this project and they feel affected and they want to share their opinion. So it's definitely a useful tool to use when trying to understand people's feedback on certain projects. We also noticed that based on where the railways are from these projects, areas that have high non-Caucasian or Hispanic populations either received less investment or they were less satisfied with their investment. Our research is inconclusive as to why this is, but it just goes to show that LA Metro didn't exactly create a completely equitable project, and this is something that they can work on improving. We also found that LA Metro did a very good job learning from the 1994 World Cup transportation implications. In 1994, they implemented temporary transportation fixes, which caused a lot of people to come to LA to fill these jobs. And then after the World Cup, they took all these jobs away, which led to an increase in crime, poverty, and homelessness. So this time around, the transportation fixes are going to be permanent, which will create a better transportation system and eliminate these negative things that happened as a result in 1994. So some lessons that I personally learned during my time on this team, I learned that AI is truly a valuable tool. I would just really like to stress this because once again, it saved a lot of time and it's something that should be taken advantage of, not pushed to the side, because it is becoming more and more prominent in our everyday lives. And I think it's important to learn to work with it, not against it. I also was able to see the value of collaboration. So our team consisted of mostly civil engineers, And we brought in a computer engineer because of his ability to code. And this skill was very valuable. He was able to program a large language model to do the specific task that we asked. And once again, this saved us a lot of time. So it just goes to show that it's important to cultivate a team that has a bunch of different skills. So when you come together, you're all a lot stronger and effective and efficient. I also was able to see that when creating big projects like this, these companies, they don't just design it the way they want to. They have to conduct a lot of prior research. They have to look into the history of the area that's going to be affected. They have to talk to the people, see what they want to see. All these different factors they have to consider, and then they make their project so that the people that it affects actually enjoy it. They like it. It fits their needs. So this is just something that I want to take away with me when I start to make projects in my future. This is definitely something that I will implement and consider. Finally, or not finally actually, but another point, I just thought this was interesting. So we were trying to get the general public's opinion, and we only use social media. To me, this shows that enough of the population uses social media to where we can now consider that the general public. To me, this just shows how widespread social media now is. And I also don't completely agree with this tactic. I think we should have also implemented in-person surveys and different ways of reaching people, because there are certain groups that don't use social media, like older generations or far younger generations, and they're still impacted by these projects. So I think it's important to use social media, but also include other forms of reaching out to these affected groups. Finally, working on this project really just opened my eyes to the field of transportation engineering. Before I joined this project, I knew I wanted to be a civil engineer, and I understood that transportation engineering is a facet of civil, but beyond that, I didn't really know too much about it. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity because it presented me with the ability to understand transportation engineering, and it's now something that I hope to pursue in the future. So while I was working on this team, my family and I also took a 2-week vacation to Costa Rica. And while I was thinking about transportation and we were driving around on all these dirt roads full of potholes, it really piqued my interest and attention. Rather than fixing what's already works really well here, in the future, I hope to go to rural areas like Costa Rica and developing countries and fix their transportation system so more people can enjoy the beautiful places like Costa Rica. When going about this, I would first conduct research on locals' opinions. Maybe they like the way their transportation's set up. Maybe they like having these dirt roads so it attracts less tourists and things like that. I would make sure to talk to them first to understand what they would like to see. And then I would go into doing my research. I would try to figure out how these potholes form. And is it from weather? Is it from temperature change? All these different things, and I would try to come up with solutions. Maybe using different road materials or increasing road maintenance, different forms and styles of road maintenance. All these different things I would consider to make beautiful places like this more accessible to the world. Thank you for your time. I'm really grateful for this opportunity once again, and I will now be taking any questions that you may have.
Yes.
Yeah, so for the LA 28 by 28, is it the Olympics by 2028 or is it the World Cup by 2028? I saw that the World Cup was 2026 and the Olympics was 2028 or
That is correct.
oh
Yeah, that's my mistake.
Yeah.
That is my mistake, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you find us, and what would you say to a high school student who might be thinking about college related to research?
So I found this program pretty interestingly. So junior year, at the end of the year, I was reaching out to a lot of different civil engineers and not a lot of them were getting back to me. I was trying to get an internship or something like that. And my dad's friend told him that I should reach out to professors. And I reached out to a lot of UCI professors, I think every civil engineering professor. And one of them forwarded me to Dr. de Guzman, and I learned about this program. So it was a great opportunity. I'm really lucky to be in this position, and I would 100% recommend it to high school students interested in civil engineering. Because I feel like transportation is like a niche field that you don't really think about too much, but there is a lot to it and it's very interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So glad we found you.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe I'll just add any lack of response is nothing personal, but that as professors, we do get so many emails, but it's really helpful that you reached out to Dr. de Guzman, who could then put in a good word and then like it just helps move the ball forward. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that worked out.
If I like knew about this program on my own, I definitely would have just applied, but I had no idea like until I got connected. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Hey. So as we're making the transition to our, thank you very much. Transition to our next speaker, Lawrence, I'm gonna put you on the spot. And then for Miles' family, I realized I didn't ask them to introduce themselves. We introduced ourselves to you, but I've done some super sleuthing over here. And you guys all have some very interesting things to share about yourself that are available on the internet that I will share if you don't. I'm kidding, but they're about career-wise, you guys have some really interesting things that you've done. But I will start with Lawrence. He's a Fulbright scholar who came to us from Andorra, which I can now place confidently on a map. And I can give you the Wikipedia. It is a landlocked country, but adjacent to Spain, right? And I'll let him introduce himself and a little bit about what he does with ITS.
So hello, I'm Erin. It's Lauren in English. I, as Vicky said, came here already 3 years ago. Time goes fast. For pursuing my master's in civil engineering, and I'm now a PhD student under the supervision of 10 years support. I'm basically interested in sustainability, in transportation, and of course, optimization of the networks. And I'm currently working in projects about road pricing. So,
And you lead the GSA?
well, this is just some fun fact. We have a little organization here at the ITS, which is the GSA. It's the Graduate Students Association, for which currently I am the president. So you're all welcome to join us. As long as you are part of the ITS, we will be happy to have you with us.
And Reina, I'll let you go ahead and get up. And I just thought, if you don't mind, family, I know we have Saddleback College and Microsoft representing, which I think would be very interesting to this group. So if you guys could share a little bit about yourselves.
So I'm Tina Shaffie, I'm Miles's mom, and I work at Saddleback College as full-time faculty. I'm working primarily with students with disabilities. So access is definitely an area that interests me, and I've always promoted my kids. So thank you for the work that you do, and definitely very interesting to be here.
Yes.
And hi, everyone, I'm Sherman Shaffie, I'm Miles's dad. These guys are not twins, by the way. So yeah, I work at Microsoft. I'm an AI engineer. And so the comment about agents, I actually help build agents for customers, synthetic data, all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah, so I've been in tech for maybe 25 years, worked at Cisco, Microsoft, different tech companies, but lately AI stuff. So thanks for having us here.
See, I told you guys it was cool. Oh my goodness. Over here. Ryan.
They can have some collaboration.
I know.
Microsoft.
Yeah, let's do it.
Ryan, you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, I'm not as special. I'm a junior at high school, Miles's brother. So far, I've just been interested in the field of chemistry and becoming a chemistry teacher, professor. And yeah, that's it. But thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you.
Professor Borowski, would you like to
So this is Reina Kabbara, yeah. And what year are you in? Fourth year. So Reina is a fourth year in the public health department. She worked with Professor Wu over the summer looking at a lack of green space. And I guess the fun fact was already shared that you're on the traffic team, but in case anyone missed it, there's that. So take it away, Reina. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. My name is Reina. I'm a fourth year public health policy major at UC Irvine, and I also minor in health informatics. So this summer I was able to work with Professor Jun Lu on the extreme heat and lack of green space specifically and in San Francisco. I worked with a couple other members as well, not in San Francisco, but they worked on other areas such as Sacramento, San Diego, and LA County as well. Okay, so for an overview of this presentation and the project that I worked on, we divided it in 7 steps. The first step is that we first identified the extreme heat event. The second step is we checked the eco stress coverage for events. And for those of you who don't know what an eco stress image is, it's basically a snapshot of the land surface temperature that is taken throughout the atmosphere. The third step was that we mapped and we analyzed the land surface temperature snapshots. The step 4 was we created local climate zones for every single city in San Francisco. Step 5, we linked the land surface temperature to the local climate zone, and we also compared it to other environmental factors. And then step 6 was I connected that to transportation related infrastructure such as roads and freeways. And then step 7 was we did a coastline analysis and a county comparison because as you all know, San Francisco is around the bay and the coastline has a very big influence on the temperatures. So the first step was that we just identified the extreme heat events. We did this by using Python, and we first cleaned all the data. We divided it within 12 stations, and we did it through the date ranges from January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2024. So we tried to work with more recent data. And then we found out the top 10 events through 2 thresholds. The first threshold was we did it based on all heat events that are 90 degrees Fahrenheit and higher. And then the second one was a 95th percentile of the temperature. And that for San Francisco, the 95th percentile is 85.8 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we decided not to use the 95th percentile just because the temperatures weren't as high. We wanted to maximize and see how we could get a heat event that's long but also has a really high temperature. We decided between choosing event 17, 31, and 8. So after we decided that we were going to use the 90 degrees Fahrenheit threshold, we checked the eco stress coverage for the events. This table right here shows event number 8. So this is the third event that we ended up deciding between. For the first event, there was several usable images. However, there were a lot of images that were cloudy or unusable. So if you can see right here, there's some clouds right here. That's what I mean when they're just too cloudy. You can't really see the county. In addition, a lot of those for event 17 and 31 were not within the boundary of San Francisco. So when they were taken, they just weren't in San Francisco in general. So we obviously cannot use that. So this is the best that we got was event number 8, which was September 5th through 7th of 2020. There was a couple of days before where we could use the images. During the heat wave, September 7th, we were able to use this image right here. And then there was plenty of other ones right here just after the heat event, because we'd like to compare before, during, and after so you can see how the temperature is changing.
So this is where we got the land surface temperature of each one. So we did it before, during, and after. As you can see right here, before, the temperatures were around like between 40 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. This was taken at 7 a.m. So many of the eco-stress images were taken in the morning. So that's also another factor that plays into why the temperatures aren't as high, is because everything was taken either 7 a.m., 12 a.m. There weren't any images at all from any event that we saw that was in the afternoon or in the evening. So that plays another big factor. So yeah, before we looked at the temperatures right here. During, you can see that temperatures start to rise, and then you can see that little pink spots in the middle, which shows the heat event. And then after, you can see the difference between before and after. It became more pink, which means it was higher temperatures than when we started from before. So that just shows that even after a heat wave, temperatures just begin to reside and stay higher for a longer period of time. So step 4 is we created the local climate zone. A local climate zone basically is different counties, and we divided it. So LCZ1 is high rise and dense area. So it's like towers. And then that's LCZ 1, 2, and 3 are just variations of dense and high rise towers. LCZ 5 and 6 are low rise, dense and non-dense. 6 is a little bit not dense. And then LCZ G and 8 are more environmental factors. There's also another LCZ for tree canopy, but there's not many tree canopy areas. There's not that many like green areas in San Francisco, so we weren't able to classify that as like, when you classify a LCZ, the majority of that area needs to be green for it to be classified in that area. So yeah, LCZG, there's all right here. And then we did it based on 4 different parameters. We did it based on building density, so the amount of buildings in a certain area. We did impervious surfaces, which is like hard surfaces that absorb heat really easily. Parameter 3 is tree canopy, and then parameter 4, we did land cover. So I don't know if you guys can see, it's a little blurry right here, but the red is basically very intensely developed areas. And if you can see, there's a lot of red areas. So, and then the green's any greenery. And then as you can see, there's not as much greenery there. And then there's the land cover. So this is like percentage of just purely land and no other green space, which is the majority of San Francisco. So now we connected the land surface temperature to the local climate zone. So we put all the variables together. We also added other environmental factors, such as we added population density, we added the elevation, we added vegetation index, and in addition to impervious surfaces, building density. So as you can see, the strongest positive correlations were the impervious surfaces, the elevation, and the population density with land surface temperature. So as impervious surfaces increase, also the temperature increases. As elevation increases, so does land surface temperature, and same with population density. The weakest correlation, surprisingly, that we found was unique was that building density, tree canopy, and the NDVI did not have as much of a correlation. And I'll get into that, explain that why that finding is big, why that's there. But there's also this is only 26%. So the R squared for this model right here was 26%. So there's also a bunch of other factors that play into it, such as coastline, because that's one of the major factors that plays into why vegetation wasn't playing as much of a role in decreasing temperatures. Okay, so this is where I get into relating the transportation infrastructure and how it relates to the extreme heat. The first step that we did was we created an NDVI map with road and green space overlay. NDVI is basically the vegetation index. NDVI of 0 to 0.33 are unhealthy plants. From 0.3 to 0.6 are moderately healthy, and then 0.6 to 1 are very healthy plants. So we just overlaid it right here. You can see the roads and the vegetation index. As you can see, it's very red. So there's a lot of vegetation that's either dead, not healthy, and yeah, there's not as many healthy plants at all. The second step was we put a land surface temperature map during the heat wave, and we overlaid that with green space. So you can see a little bit right here, it's a little bit more pink in the inland areas, where it's a little darker, like darker purple on the outside. It just shows that it's cooler on the outsides. In the inland area, it's a little bit more hot. And then the third step, sorry, there's 3 steps right here. This is step 5, I'm sorry about that. But we did a analysis for land surface temperature with and without green space with roads. This graph right here is during the heat wave of without green space, or with green space, those are the temperatures, and then this one is without green space. So I graphed it right here just to make it a little simpler, because you guys probably can't see those images right there, that there is a small difference between road with no green space and road with green space. It's about a 1 to 2 degree Fahrenheit difference. It shows that the roads with green space are consistently cooler land surface temperature than the ones with just the road without green space. And then so in my opinion, this is the most important factor, confounding factor for San Francisco, is the coastline analysis, just because all these yellow dots right here are building footprints. So they're all the different, all the buildings and how close they are to the coastline. As you can see, they're all very close, as the minimum distance was 0.91 meters, which is 0.00057 miles from the coast, which is extremely close. And then the median distance was 5 miles from the coast. So a majority of the buildings are not within like 5 to 10 or 5 to 7 miles from the coast. And then yeah, so the building and tracks closer to the coastline align with cooler local climate zones and land surface temperatures because of the cooling influence of the Pacific Ocean. So then, understanding how San Francisco is around the bay, we also compared our San Francisco model to our partner's model for Sacramento. And as you can see, the urban heat island effect is more prominent in Sacramento, as there's a bunch more greenery right here. Sacramento has a stronger urban heat island effect because it's a more inland location. The land surface temperatures of Sacramento is strongly tied to impervious surfaces, building density, and population density as well. And then there is a stronger cooling from the tree canopy in NDVI because it's not as close to the coast. And then as for San Francisco, it's more uniformly dense, and then almost no natural LCZs, so almost no tree canopy. While Sacramento has a lot of tree canopy, it's almost like 0.5% right there. And then both cities, the hottest zones are the dense impervious surface LCZs. So LCZ 1, 2, 3, and 5, the denser areas, they have a higher land surface temperature. And then the tree canopy, NDVI, and elevation reduce LST in both places, but Sacramento obviously more than San Francisco. And then I also put in 2 types of mitigation for urban planning. For Sacramento, we could target greening impervious cores and protect and expand surrounding natural buffers. And then for San Francisco, to focus on the dense urban core with the tree canopy, shaded corridors, and cooling infrastructure, especially in the inland part of San Francisco rather than the coastal part. Okay, and thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity. I want to thank Victoria right here for allowing me to join this program, even though in the beginning it was unsure. And then also my mentor, Professor Jun Wu, and the grad students that helped me as well.
And I'd like to comment, the unsure
Yeah.
was not Reina, we wanted Reina. The unsure was the match between what Reina was interested in and the faculty and the projects that we had. So Professor Jun Wu had not originally been on the faculty list. I reached out to her, Reina's advisor, and said, hey, I know you weren't thinking about doing this summer, but I have a really good reason for you to consider it. Her name is Reina, and I'd like to introduce you. Reina paved her own way. She impressed Professor Wu so much that Professor Wu jumped into the program, and here we are, so.
I'd also like to add that I'm actually continuing this. So this is only what I've done in the summer. Previously, like going into this, I had no experience with Python, GIS. So and everything was just kind of handed to me. It's like, okay, do this. And I didn't know how to do anything. So it was definitely a learning curve, but I was able to come out of it now knowing how to use Python, knowing how to use GIS. And now, hopefully by the end of this quarter, we're going to publish a paper with me, the Sacramento partner, and LA County and San Diego. And we're going to be publishing a paper and adding on to all of this evidence, and also try to change up certain things just to make the evidence more valid and reliable.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And do you guys have any questions?
It's all in awe. Any questions?
Actually, I want to ask, in that confusion matrix, I noticed that all diagonal number is one, right? In your confusion matrix, yeah, I noticed that all diagonal number is one. Are you? Yeah, I just curious about that results.
Sorry, which, we go to next slide? Oh,
Yeah.
confusion.
Correlation.
Oh, the correlation.
Is the confusion? Yeah, this is the confusion. This is the confusion matrix, right?
The one right here?
Yeah, all diagonal is one.
Yeah, so this was just like what came out of the Python. I think all the ones right here are kind of,
It should be one.
yeah, like it's a correlation matrix, so it's hard to like, yeah, I'm sorry to explain, but yeah,
Calibrates it.
yeah, calibrate.
Sorry,
Hopefully correlate itself. Anyone else?
So maybe I have one question. I mean, this seems to be very comprehensive. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The research. And I believe step 6 was on the correlation to transportation infrastructure. I might have missed it. I mean, how significant
The
transportation infrastructure are correlated to extreme heat and this events.
Yeah, so for the transportation infrastructure, we really saw how the roads, like how they get hot from the extreme heat, and the impervious surfaces as well. So the higher the heat is from the roads, like the more air pollution there are, and then the more lower income communities are being affected by that, because they are being placed next to these areas.
Sure.
So like for me, like lower income areas that are being placed next to the high road, like the extreme heat areas, they're suffering more than just other communities that the communities that have less impervious surfaces and less impervious surfaces have like a lower temperature.
That is something very interesting. I think there's merit in your explanation regarding how the roads would impact the extreme heat and impact the disadvantage demographic. But on the other hand, I see the roads might be a consequence of population of other things, so that this might be just correlated, not real cause. That doesn't make sense. How do you
put that
differentiate these two? I mean, you see what I mean?
This summer, I was advised to look at correlations between like how the temperatures are affected by roads, how they're affected by impervious surfaces and other factors as well. I think that for the paper that we are making, we're including a lot of different factors, and we're going to be, instead of using like a standardized model, like a standardized Python code, we're going to try using GAM models as well, and try to increase the cause effects of that as well.
Okay. That is cool. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Now I'd like to invite Professor Highland, and what he doesn't know, Professor Highland, is we've all introduced ourselves. And we've designated our high school students' family up here as our VIP section. So I'd like to introduce you, the people you don't know in the room are going to be Miles' mother and his father and his mother.
Yeah, so Mike Highland, I'm an associate professor here at UC Irvine in civil environmental engineering. My research is on transportation modeling analysis. I tend to focus on emerging technologies, innovations in the transportation space. So driverless vehicles, I guess you can't call Uber and Lyft emerging anymore. They've been here for over a decade, but I still consider them emerging, sharing marketability, things like that. That good enough introduction? And now I can get into introducing Tim.
You can, yes.
Very nice. So I'm very happy to introduce my summer prime student, Tim. I'll give a kind of a brief story here. So we get great students for high school, from the high school program through prime, but I try not to set my expectations too high because we're not going to be here that long, and it's a little bit difficult to fit them into research projects sometimes. So I did what I usually do with the high school students, which is try to help them learn about the project we're working on with the hope that maybe they can contribute long term. So we were doing some work on transit and microtransit in Richmond and Cupertino, two areas I've never been to before. So when we do research projects in these areas, we want to get as much background knowledge as possible. So I had Tim basically try to get some facts about what is going on in Richmond, what is going on in Cupertino. You hear about that a little bit later. I kind of expected this to take 4 or 5 weeks. Week 1, Tim has Richmond done. Week 2, he has Cupertino done. Like, all right, I gotta get some more stuff for him to do. So you'll hear about the kind of the comparisons I had him do between these two cities. So Tim, welcome.
So, hi, my name is Tim, and my presentation is about analyzing the impact of land use and socio-demographics on microtransit. So here's a bit about me. I'm currently a sophomore at Woodbridge High School. In the future, I intend to major in civil engineering. It is a field I'm very passionate about, and I hope to make a change in. I've also interned with the City Transportation Commission for over a year now, where I advocate for better walking, cycling, and transit infrastructure. And speaking of that, some of my hobbies are biking and riding transit. It is, biking is definitely a lot better than most North American cities. We have some great trails and great biking infrastructure, and transit isn't too bad either. Like riding time also take cars off the road, which is better for other people as well. And speaking of that, I hope that transportation in the future has less car dependency and more people-oriented development, and that's what I hope to do after majoring in civil engineering. So going to my presentation. So first, I'm going to go over what is microtransit. Typically, they have these 4 elements that make a microtransit. We usually have a vehicle smaller than a regular bus, but bigger than a private vehicle, as you can see in this picture right here from LA Metro. Those have flexible routing, meaning that they can go multiple ways, and it's usually tech-enabled to ensure that you can do flexible routing where the vehicles can go where the ridership and the demand is. And lastly, you need to have low and affordable fares, preferably in the single digits, But this is a heavy burden for a lot of transit agencies where you have to subsidize a lot because operating these vehicles is not cheap at all. And microtransit success can be defined in these 3 ways. So it should cover gaps in mobility that are not filled with other modes of transit like biking or walking or buses, or they're not feasible. And 2, you should have convenient and reliable servers, meaning that the travel times and the wait times are pretty consistent every time you ride it. And lastly, you should maximize efficiency where you're maximizing the boardings per vehicle per hour. And that is sometimes very difficult to do in areas where it's very sprawling or there isn't enough infrastructure to make the operations more efficient. And to learn about this, I looked at Cupertino and Richmond, California. These 2 cities are both located in the Bay Area. Cupertino is located just west of San Jose, and Richmond just north of Berkeley. But these two cities have drastically different demographics and urban planning. For example, Richmond is the median income is about a third of the Cupertino. So these two cities have very different demographics. They also have their respective microtransit and fixed route transit systems as well. And my goal is to identify with these two cities which factors play into microtransit and what makes it good and what makes it bad. So firstly, one of the most important ones is definitely land use. Microtransit tend to work well in areas with moderate to low density, such as suburbs, and also areas with close proximity to transit stations like Richmond, where there are transit stations in the city center. And grid-like street layouts allow microtransit to function better, where it is very easy to route the vehicles, but it is also important to consider that this is also very efficient for buses as well. So you have to consider other viable alternatives to microtransit. But disconnected street grids like cul-de-sacs are very inefficient for transit operations and must detour around the disconnected roads in order to reach the destination. Also, places where pedestrian and bike infrastructure is subpar can make microtransit a viable option. But microtransit should not be a permanent solution. They're usually temporary solutions or a pilot which allow the cities to buy more time to improve other modes of transit. And then here are socio-demographic impacts on microtransit. So firstly, young residents tend to have lower car ownership rates. When people in college needs to get a car, it becomes a heavy financial burden for them. And also the older population also have a very low car ownership rate. But microtransit requires the usage of apps, and not all of the elderly have a phone or even the transit app. And also low-income residents are very transit dependent as well, so they are also more likely to use microtransit. But this only works if it is available to when they need it. For example, in Richmond, about half the population travel to work outside the county, which makes the commuting distance very long. And because of it, you have to leave your home very early. And census data shows that in Richmond, about a third of the population leave their homes for work before 7:30 a.m. However, the microtransit only starts operating at 7. So the timing isn't matching up with their schedule. So you're losing a lot of that potential ridership. And generally, microtransit functions most smoothly if the trips are spread throughout the day. So in Cupertino, about 50% of the people travel to work during rush hour, which makes it where microtransit doesn't function that well, because when you have a lot of people riding at the same time, it doesn't make operations easy. And that should be it. And that concludes my presentation.
While you're thinking of questions, we had a couple of people come in. I'd like to introduce, to them to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Professor Wu, who hurried in from a prior commitment to support a student, Reina. And I thought maybe you could introduce yourself and then maybe tell us a little bit about your experience with the program and Reina.
Yeah, so my name is Jun Wu. I'm professor in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health under the Wang School of Population and Public Health. So we became the school status 2 years ago, relatively new. And my research is about very broadly environmental health, exposure assessment of air pollution, built environment, and environmental epidemiology, looking at the health impact of various environmental exposures. And also I work a lot with local communities on their environmental justice concerns, such as air pollution, contamination, and also extreme heat. So in the summer, Reina worked on a project. She already presented. I'm so sorry about that. I missed your presentation. So it's about they use remote sensing data to look at the extreme heat at a very local level and the influential factors. So she did a great job and really proud of you. Thank you. Yeah.
And Professor Dean.
Hi, Professor Dean. I joined 2 years now, 2 years ago. This is my third year, and I had a student, Milena, who was part of the trip program this summer. She now has a transportation engineering internship after the result of the summer, and she looked into the LA 2020 Olympics. Where should we place charging station infrastructure? She took the approach of trying to balance short-term operational needs with long-term improvements in disadvantaged communities, and suggested that a number of the stadiums and sport facilities are located in close proximity to school bus depots. And so you could electrify and help school districts electrify their school bus fleets through providing LA 2020 EV charging infrastructure. So she did some spatial mapping for that project. Broadly, I'm interested in sustainable transportation and involving energy research. So that's through understanding behavioral adoption decisions and modeling that at large scale.
Now, questions.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I wanted to share a quick story, which is your microtransit song made me think about my mom who lives in Toronto in Canada. And all the themes that you mentioned, like older people don't have cars as much, applies to her, and the fact that it's a smaller vehicle, not as big as a bus, but it can come right to her driveway and pick her up locally and take her to places, and she can use an app or call in, so it's easy to schedule. All of those things are, I was like, yeah, it was resonating with me. I was like, okay, this is exactly right. And some places do a great job at it, right? Like Toronto is doing a good job with it, and maybe other places like you discovered. So I just wanted to share that idea.
Yeah, thank you for the comment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe my comment or question is not really related to microtransit, but I'm interested in your biking experience as a high schooler. And actually, yeah, I kind of agree with you saying that Irvine has a, kind of a better, trails and the bike, the infrastructure. But at the same time, there's this car speed limit is so high, right? How to address this issue from as a high schooler? Do you guys feel be in danger by fast passing cars and so on?
Like, because I bike a lot, I pretty much got used to it. I don't really mind the fast traffic. Like 55 miles per hour is okay for me.
You're okay.
I'm okay with 55 miles per hour.
I have a high school. I don't feel safe. Maybe you are okay. Good enough.
But like, you can maybe like add some protected bike lanes, put like a curb between the bike lane and the vehicle lanes, or maybe like make it so that the intersections, the turns aren't as wide for the bike turns to make it more visible as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right turn on red can be super dangerous for bikers, right?
Yeah, people honk at me for being the bike lane, but they want to use the bike lane as a right turn lane, Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe you guys can do something.
Yeah.
How to improve?
Yeah,
Like let the parents to feel safer.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, the city is picking up the pace on building protected bike lanes, but it's nowhere near enough, to be honest. Yeah. Yeah.
Good to know.
Any other questions? Okay. Jeff, you have a question? You didn't introduce yourself yet, did you?
Oh,
Go ahead and introduce yourself while you're asking your questions.
Sure.
He's an alum of our program.
Yeah,
He's
so
done fantastic things that never would have happened without the program, right?
yeah, not pretty much. My name is Jeffrey Vanderveen. I have been an undergraduate researcher with NCS for I guess 3 years now, almost. That's kind of crazy. I've been around for a little while. I did the trip program between my sophomore and junior year of college. I'm a senior now. I really enjoyed it. It was a really great time. I grew up in San Jose, California, moved down here. A lot of my interests are very much in sort of the how can we plan transit better? Like, how can we decide which bus routes are most effective and stuff like that? I find that really fascinating. I think the operation side is really interesting. But yeah, that's kind of about me. My question for you was, did you find like anything in what you're talking about between Cupertino and Richmond? Like growing up in the Bay, I'm very familiar with the very different demographics between the two. Did you find it was better upkeep with like people who are more transit dependent up in Richmond, or was it kind of like same level of like, I guess were more people taking it in Richmond, were more people interested in it, or was it kind of like the same between Cupertino and Richmond?
That's a good question. So I took a look at the ridership numbers and the operating hours and the ridership and the efficiencies for both of systems are pretty similar at about like just under 3 boardings per vehicle per hour, which is just slightly below the optimal ridership of 3. But I think a reason why Richmond isn't, despite the higher population, doesn't have more the ridership efficiency on microtransit is because there is a lot of existing fixed route transit to begin with, and the fixed route transit is generally faster than microtransit and also more reliable. Because for microtransit, it may take 20 minutes on one day, but 40 minutes on another day because you don't know the traffic with different routing or maybe different demand. Yeah.
What is existing transit in Richmond?
This area is AC Transit, which is the fixed route bus system. Yeah, since they generally have pretty frequent service throughout the day. So yeah, I think people like to depend on that more.
Thanks.
All right, well, thank you and congratulations on the investment. Shaffie will introduce our last program speaker, after which our host Reaton, who is doing the hard work of keeping these things up, will be sharing his research with us. And then at about noon, we'll break for lunch.
All right, so our last speaker then is Carissa Kelly. I met Carissa at a Society of Women Engineers event last spring, and she's a second year in mechanical engineering. And she worked with me on a Corkel funded project looking at the accessibility of mental health facilities in disaster prone areas. So this is a small internal grant that we can apply for as faculty that I got. And so I didn't have any background work done on this when Carissa started on this project. I had a very short proposal, had not worked out all the details, and Carissa was a really great collaborator in deciding all these design decisions, designing the survey, doing this choice experiment, which is actually an assignment that I give in my graduate level discrete choice modeling class. She did an excellent job. I was really grateful to work with her. So thank you so much, Carissa.
Thank you for the introduction. As mentioned, my name is Carissa, and I'm a second year mechanical engineering undergrad student here at UCI. And this is my presentation. So for a little bit of context, we're going to go over the background of the experiment, then we're going to get into the survey, which is of the project and its components, and then we're going to do a brief overview of results and findings. So for a bit of background, the disaster that we're focusing on is wildfires, and specifically. And for some context, victims of wildfires are shown to exhibit symptoms of PTSD, anxiety, and depression at much higher rates. And these symptoms have a lasting impact following the initial disaster and like inciting incident. These symptoms can last up to like decades post the incident. Loss due to wildfires, such as property damage or losing loved ones, increases this distress. And demographics that experience distress at a higher level include those of a lower socioeconomic status, women and people of color for systemic reasons. And these demographics also tend to be less likely to seek out help in mental health services. So hopefully this survey can identify the barriers that they perceive. So the survey itself, it is a choice experiment meant to identify factors that people consider when seeking out mental health help and identify which of these factors may serve as barriers or which ones that the response value. The survey includes a definitions page and a comprehension check, as well as a clear instructions page and a sample question to prepare the user. These are just precautions taken to make sure that the respondents understand the parameters of the experiment and what they're being asked to do. So the survey itself, it's comprised of 2 different scenarios, one where the user is not displaced after wildfire and one in which they are. There are 6 questions per scenario, so 12 total, and there are additional socio-demographic and open-ended feedback questions at the end. The survey logistics, we got 477 responses. They were all Californians, ages 18 to 34. And one thing to note is that this was done completely online, so we did not administer this in person at all. This was found over the internet. To go into a little detail, we have to break down the attributes and their levels. We have 4 different attributes. These were like factors that we evaluated people base their choices on. So the first and the attributes were broken down into levels, and we were given visual components to help aid the respondents in their choices, as demonstrated off to the side there. Our first attribute was the mode. This included text, call, office, and mobile clinic. So this kind of allowed us to see how much the user prioritizes being in the comfort of their own home and having convenience of like virtual sessions versus having the like routine and the rigidness of having sessions in a fixed location. We had an attribute for human interaction. This was simple like yes or no. And this allowed us to see how much the user prioritizes having speaking with a human or a licensed individual as opposed to self-guided online resources and like their own research or using like AI tools. Our next attribute was availability. This included a schedule ahead option, which is like your traditional appointment, drop-in hours, and then 24/7 access. And this allowed us to see how much the user prioritized constant access as opposed to a fixed time, once again, that routine that some people may value. And then our last attribute was pretty simple, weekly fee. It started off with free at $0, and then it increased to 15, 30, and 45. And this obviously let us see how much cost played a factor in deciding mental health care, but it also let us see some insight into how much people value other factors. And if they're willing to say pay more for having human interaction, for having sessions in an office, or for having access to like those mobile clinics and such. This is an example question. So this is what our respondents were seeing. This is of the first scenario when they are not displaced, and you can see they have 3 separate alternatives with a randomly generated situation for each of them. And we did include an opt-out option if they were not satisfied at all with these options. For the question itself, we had a condensed version of the definitions as a reminder for like clarity and such, and then the 4 options, yes. So for results and findings, the survey results were analyzed using a program in R and RStudio, and then a mixed budget model was used to compare the results of the 2 situations and to kind of demonstrate patterns in both like general preferences and then for specific demographics for each attribute and see which one they favor and which one they really don't favor. Something interesting to note was that women were more likely than men to choose the none options, which kind of contradicts current studies where that imply that women are more likely to seek out help seeking therapy as opposed to their male counterparts, which is interesting. It could just imply that the options they were given in this survey were less satisfactory. But yes, that was definitely surprising in a way. Other demographics that often opted out of receiving care includes lower income households, people who are unemployed, and those living in rural areas, which this is interesting because it gives us insight into perceived barriers. Obviously, there's the financial aspect for the lower sociodemographic parts. And then even in living in rural areas, especially when displaced, they could think of mental health care in a very like rigid sense where it's like, oh, this is a thing that takes place in cities. I won't have access to this. So that was interesting to see. More results were that cost and human interaction were the 2 biggest driving factors in making a choice out of our attributes. And there's also a general distaste for AI and a huge prioritization of human interaction for therapy. in our feedback section, many people expressed the idea of using AI. There's like a variety of opinions in that. Many people were staunchly against AI in general. So we had some passionate responses there. Others were against AI in the strict sense of like having it offer therapy and such. We had, I believe, exactly one comment that preferred AI to human interaction, which was definitely interesting. Many people also prefer to be in person at a fixed location or virtual via phone and video calls. But what's interesting is that displacement caused a shift towards favoring those mobile clinics and really saw the respondents valuing flexibility and a sharp decline of like preferring to be in an office. And that is it. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, I have two questions. First, so about the survey that you guys deployed, I mean, you said that you used an online platform, right? So I was wondering like which platform you use to like distribute your survey?
It was done through Question Pro.
So we designed in Question Pro and then Prolific was, you didn't see that side of it, but.
You used Prolific.
Prolific, yeah.
And I know you guys use the mixed logic model, right? I mean, I don't know, you guys tried the other models like multinomial?
Yeah, we
I'm
just
wondering why
started
you choose.
doing the modeling and I just started with that. So, yeah, I started with mixed logit. And then, but there's like a really large distribution in, trying to remember what it was, which one I randomized. But I think just the coefficient, I think because this is a hypothetical scenario, I just wanted to make the random, the alternative specific constant random to capture that heterogeneity. But what were you recommending? Or you were just curious?
No, I was wondering which model, why you
mixed?
also tested like multinomial, I mean, why
Yeah.
you choose mixed logit, so.
Yeah, I wanted to model it in willingness to pay space to capture like what the cost associated with each parameter would be. But I was getting some weird results. So anyway, I'm still playing around with the
Okay, yeah.
models. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question. So it looks like the age range is relatively narrow. So what is the reason for that? Can you capture the elderly population now?
Oh, could we have, if we had made a different decision?
Okay.
Yeah.
We wanted to prioritize mental health specifically in young adults, so that was kind of the focus of this specific part. We could expand it in the future if we so desired, but this was a good base sample size.
Thank you.
Did you capture whether the person, the respondent, or the participant had a health insurance plan that covered telehealth or any of these mental health programs?
No, you can answer.
I believe it was assumed that their insurance covers the fee.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was laid out in the like introductory.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing, how much you pay the respondents, just curious.
It was like minimum wage per, it only took 15 minutes to do the
And how long
survey.
was that, just the whole survey?
Time wise?
Yeah.
Like 15 minutes.
So then, thank you.
You mentioned there was a comment section in the surveys.
Yes, we had a feedback
I
session.
was wondering if you remember any interesting comments.
A lot of them were just the feedback section. It was like, the main part that I analyzed was asking what specific factor that they valued the most in that. Just to make sure that what we were seeing in the comments kind of matched up with what we had in the results. To make sure that people weren't just like clicking through, that they were actually truthful to it. There was a lot of comments. We had some comments that were just kind of like paragraphs, waxing poetic about a distaste for certain things, specifically AI. People had a lot of strong opinions about that, which was very interesting to see. Yeah, like I said, there was like one comment that was like, I would rather have AI than human interaction, but that was pretty much it. That was an outlier.
Maybe, I mean, regarding the platform, the online platform, do you guys get any clearance from, IRB?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Is there a measure in place to prevent bots?
I don't think it's a problem.
Prolific is not so much of a problem, although there is this new package in R, because you can design surveys in R now, that looks at the responses and models each question's response through a Markov decision process to determine whether it transitions into some other state that is like a bot-like behavior or straight lining approach. So there are ways to catch these statistical methods now.
Yeah, so we had one time used a red cow to do the survey, and that's for the testing hunger fire event. And then we got like 1,300 survey like within a day, and later we found out that the majority of them are bots. So it's like a learning experience.
I believe that we did go through some of the responses and removed some that had like a very short response time, so people just like clicking through. And yeah, that was what the feedback session at the end was hopefully for, as kind of like not super strong, but like another precaution of being like, are the comments that we're seeing match up with the results we're getting from the survey? So we did consider that.
Fantastic, thank you so much. Our final speaker, I'd like to take a moment to introduce the guest. Sam Kirschman, I just have met him just now. He has a very interesting background. He is here because he's very interested in what we do. So thank you all for being such a good example of what we do. He comes to us from Northeastern, where he had a degree in economics, and now he's a master of city, urban, community, and regional planning. And he has some really interesting internships. I've been cyber stalking you while you he worked at my favorite set of companies, TJ Maxx, in global supply and procurement. And he also did something, I want him to say a little bit. I hope he'll tell us about value added produce. He oversaw the flow of value added produce in a buyer co-op. These were both on the East Coast. That was in Maine, and his TJ Maxx time was in Massachusetts.
Yes, so I was a produce buyer at Hannaford Supermarkets, which is a pretty small but regional grocery chain in New England. And I was responsible, it's my first ever office job, and they gave me a lot of money to make sure that produce got to where it was supposed to go within the grocery store. So from farm to the store through the whole supply chain process. And it was a really awesome learning experience. And then I had obviously the other procurement internship, but I'm here to learn more about ITS. I'm in the process of making the transition to kind of the urban planning field. So I was hoping to get involved in research and things like that.
You've come to the right place. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. Professor Hunt.
Yes, so I'm happy to introduce my PhD student who's been your MC here today, Saha. So this work's been going on that is my microtransit research work. The student's been working with me on this essentially since he got here 4 years ago. I'm excited to hear what he has to say, and hope you all join me in give him a round of applause.
Okay, so as Professor Highland mentioned, this is research that I did with Professor Highland and one of our former PhD student, Siwei. So he's not here, he's a postdoc in medical school. So let's go into the presentation. So my project also includes microtransit, and team already had done an excellent job introducing it, so I'm taking part of it. So let's go into the basic idea. So the idea of that project is to put together microtransit and fixed route transit. So microtransit, you all heard that it has this advantages of flexible routing, flexible scheduling. It can come right at your doorstep to pick you up. And but these are small vehicles, cannot accommodate much people, and the ridership, that's a different issue. But fixed route transit vehicles, like they can carry a lot of people at a time, but their commodities, their routes, and their schedules are really restricted. And you have to go to like to catch the bus, it don't come to your place. So the idea is to put them together to fill the service gaps. You can take microtransit to reach the fixed route transit, and it can also expand coverages in low demand regions to where transit coverage is really low, and it can also provide services for disadvantaged people like low income people and physically challenged people. So the gap that we identified is that there is no optimal fare structure for this kind of integrated system where these two modes are working side by side or in integration. So this kind of integration might benefit both the passenger and the agencies. And there is no utilization of an intermodal component of fare which can essentially integrate these two components of the system. So to address this problem, we developed a bi-level formulation. On the top level, we have the Bayesian optimization framework, which basically sets the optimal fares and fleet size for the microtransit system. And on the lower level, we have a integrated simulation model, which can put together the microtransit and fixed route transit. So in the real world, this can be thought of as the top part, which is the Bayesian optimization model, can be thought of as the transit agency. They are trying to set some fare and fleet size. And the lower level model can be thought of as the real world where these configurations of fare and fleet sizes are implemented in the system and how the system is reacting to those policies. And it goes back into the upper level, and on each iteration we find the optimal fare and fleet size configurations. Regarding the integrated simulation model, we use several parameters for this study. As I mentioned already, the microtransit fleet size, that means how many vehicles will be there, various components of fare, fixed route transit fare, then microtransit base fare, which is start fare, then microtransit distance based fare, per mile fare, then peak period surge multiplier on the microtransit fare, then micro to fixed route transit discount factor, which is if you take microtransit to transfer into fixed route transit, you get a discount on the fixed route transit fare. And this simulation model basically has two components, the demand component and the supply component. Demand component basically consists of a binary logic mode choice model and multimodal pathfinding algorithm. And in the binary logic mode choice model, we use two outcomes. The travelers can either take the transit, which would include both the microtransit and the fixed route transit, and they can otherwise they can take their own card to complete the trip. I won't go much into details, but the utility functions include various parameters like wait time, inter-vehicle travel time, fare, number of transfers for car. It also includes gas costs, and the demand model basically outputs the total number of travelers those who will be taking transit and the total number of travelers those who will be taking their cars out of all the travelers. In the supply model, we created a multimodal network, which is called the super network. So the multimodal network is the network through which the travelers, those who are taking the transit, will complete their trips. You can see a typical trip that can happen taking the transit, taking the fixed route transit as well as the micro transit. And also there is this on the bottom part we have the auto network, which will be used for only cars. The multimodal network includes the microtransit network, walking network, and the fixed route transit network. I would like to mention that since it's a multimodal network and we include two modes, microtransit and fixed route transit, but people are free to take only one mode, that is unimodal trips, only fixed route transit or only microtransit. Then on the upper level, which is the Bayesian optimization framework, we use two objectives. That means it's a multi-object. We use two objectives. First, we minimize subsidy. We simultaneously minimize subsidy and maximize mobility. Subsidy would be the subsidy from the transit agency side to provide the microtransit service, and mobility is a measure that I will explain later, which basically explains how much movement of people increased after we introduce a new mode along with the fixed route traffic, the new mode being the microtransit service. Our decision variables, as I already mentioned, FRT fare, then microtransit fares, two type of fares, and microtransit peak period surge factor, and the discount factor. We set various bounds for the variables. Like for transit fare, we have $1 to $5. Then this base fare going from microtransit base fare going from $0 to $3. Distance-based fare from $0 to $5, and so on. We use a fleet size of 2 to 7 vehicles for our analysis, and we set a constraint to restrict the minimum microtransit fare to be $0.5. That means you cannot get a free ride out of the system. Subsidy is the difference between the operating cost from the transit agency side to operate both the fixed route transit and the microtransit, and the revenue from fare. The operating cost includes FRT and microtransit hourly labor cost and per mile gasoline cost, and revenue is collected from the fares of FRT and microtransit. Mobility log sum, as I already mentioned, that it's a measure of mobility improvement after we add a new mode along with the existing mode, that is the FRT only. In the equation, to be precise, it's the expected maximum utility, including all the outcomes in the logic model. So we take that's why there is this log term, and the difference basically says what would be the difference of the total expected total utility when we have both of the modes, that is the fixed route transit and microtransit, and when we have just one mode, fixed route transit. And the alpha term is the marginal utility per dollar. So we divide the total difference by alpha term, and then it converts the difference into USD value. So mobility log sum is essentially expressed as USD. Why we use Bayesian optimization? That is because our objectives are coming from this integrated simulation framework, and unlike any other simulation framework, it does not have any functional form for those objectives, which means it's a black box model. So if you do not have the functional form for the objectives, you cannot use traditional optimization methods like gradient-based methods to optimize those objectives. What Bayesian optimization do is that it can, with enough set of observations, like if we run the simulation framework enough number of times, we would have a set of output for both of those objectives. So with enough set of observations, it can create a probabilistic representation of those objectives. So which we call the surrogate model. And then you can go ahead and use various methods to optimize that surrogate model and get the optimal outputs. Our case study was in Lemon Grove, California. We used Sandex road network and then GTFS transit network. On the bottom left, you can see the red lines are various transit routes along with the dots which represent the stops, and the yellow lines are the road network basically. For the demand data, we generated the synthetic demand from activity sim. Almost 21,000 trips were generated for the Lemon Grove region. You can see in the figure, the top one is a spatial demand pattern, and the bottom one is a temporal demand pattern throughout the day. We assume 15-minute headways for all FRT routes. Then we call it virtual stops. That means microtransit can come 75% of the street corners within that region. And analysis period is from 5 to 8 p.m. This is our result. On the left, this is the Pareto optimal frontier of both of the objectives. On the x-axis, we have minimized subsidy, and on the y-axis, we have maximized mobility. So the Pareto optimal frontier is represented by the purple dots. So you can see there is an approximate curve which is going from left to right. The curve has a steep slope at the beginning, and then it gradually flattens out a bit. So the steep slope means you can get a big improvement on mobility with a modest increase in subsidy in the beginning. But as you move to the right, you can see that to get a significant improvement on the y-axis, you need to get a significant improvement on the x-axis. That means you need to have a large subsidy to get large improvement on mobility. That means your even if you invest a lot, like through subsidy, your returns tend to get diminished. The blue dots are naive designs. By naive designs, we mean the design like the fare structure and the fleet size value, which does not go through this kind of analysis. The analysis like change of demand throughout the day and how the system reacts and how the demand and supply interacts. If you do not consider and just set the fare based on some thumb rules or experience, it is so obviously it is not on the Pareto frontier because these are dominant solutions. Dominant solution means it will be either bad on the subsidy side or it will be either bad on the mobility side. So we think that if it is bad on subsidy side, it either hurts it hurts the agency, and if it is bad on the mobility side, it hurts passengers. So we recommend going through a systematic approach where you consider all these changes and like interactions and set the parameters and the system configurations, which is the fleet size accordingly. In all the non-dominant solution, we can see there are peak period search factors for microtransit vehicles, microtransit fare, which means that it doesn't make sense to have same fare throughout the day, throughout peak period and throughout the off-peak period. We need to have like an increase in fare during the peak period to optimally balance demand and supply interactions and demand and supply. It basically manages the demand so that the supply we have can operate optimally. And we see that, so I should mention that in Lemon Grove region, currently there is no microtransit service. In the simulation model, we introduce this service and we see how it can operate if microtransit service can be introduced there. So from our study, we see that average microtransit wait times mean how much you have to wait after you place a request on the app. and the vehicle comes and picks you up. The average wait time are like lower than many existing services that are available, if not all. So it's a good sign, but since like all other models, our model is also approximate had some approximations. So you can consider this as a little bit optimistic. Micro to FRT discount factor. As I already mentioned, if you take the microtransit first, then move to the fixed route transit, you get a discount. And our study shows that the discount ranges from 100% to 54% for all the optimal solutions. I mean, non-dominant optimal solutions. So that means free to near free transfers from microtransit to fixed route transit means you take the microtransit, your fixed route transit is free. It helps both the passengers and agencies because it's the optimal solution. So it's optimal on the passenger side in terms of mobility, and it's also optimal in terms of agency side in terms of subsidy. This is a representation of the all non-dominant optimal solutions. Each line will represent one optimal solution across all the parallel axes, which represents all the decision variables. You can see a spike on the fleet size axis. That means fleet size is a very dominant factor in terms of both the objectives. On the left, we have the mobility log sum. On the right, we have the subsidy. So adding fleet, like more vehicle in the fleet definitely increases the mobility of people because more people can make trips with those vehicles. But it also increases the subsidy substantially because more vehicles will come with cost. And if we keep on increasing the fleet size, eventually the marginal cost outweighs the marginal revenue from all those mobility increase. So we recommend against finally increasing the fleet size, but take a strategic approach towards fleet size increase. We also did some k-means clustering of the all non-dominant solutions, and we came up with 5 clusters. All the fleet size and fare values in these clusters are the average values of the points that it includes. So different transit agencies might have different priorities for designing their systems. And we identified a couple of priorities, and we think we can fit one or more clusters to their need. First of all, for example, if you have budgetary pressure, you can go with cluster 0 or cluster 2, which has lower subsidy. That means it's easier on the cost side from the agency, but definitely you have to sacrifice low mobility. Then if you want to focus on access to transportation for mobility disadvantaged populations, you can go with cluster 1 or cluster 3, which has high mobility, low microtransit fares, high discounts on the microtransit fare, on the FRT fare, as I explained, but the trade-off is high subsidy. So you might not be very worried about spending a lot. Those who want to scale their service gradually with time without incurring high cost, cluster 4 balances cost and service quality optimally. And then if you want a cost efficient service in a very small region, you can go with cluster 0, which has a very small fleet size and highest micro distance based fare. This is important because this discourages long distance microtransit trips. If you want to go long distance, it's substantially high fare because of the highest microtransit distance based fare. The key takeaways are in this study, we simultaneously considered economic cost through the minimized subsidy part and agency benefits to the users from the maximized mobility part. Our case study demonstrates microtransit fleet size is important. peak period multiplier is important and intermodal transfer discount is important in order to have optimal balance. Clustering analysis shows implementation ready solutions for transit agencies based on various kind of needs. We are still developing this study, and we plan to implement it in a high population density areas like downtown San Diego, access to how it provides access to low income populations. And we can also potentially explore other conflicting objectives like microtransit wait time and microtransit vehicle utilization. Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Questions? Oh, let's start with Lawrence.
So sorry, maybe you mentioned this, but so all these results are based on a door-to-door pickup or on a car pickup?
Well, we construct the network to assign the request at a node, and we really do not focus if it is like door or not a door. We call this street corner virtual stops. Like if you put a request, Uber like shows you a pickup point where you have to go. So those are virtual stops. It doesn't exist in reality. It's virtual. So we consider those. But it's a good idea to consider how much time it will take to reach those spots from your starting point.
I mean, I think it would have a huge impact, right?
Yeah, it can have a huge impact. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And then it's maybe I can bother you at another time about this, but you said something about the concept of the marginal utility per dollar, which seemed like a constant in your model. Like, can you explain it a little bit?
That's a parameter.
But it depends on what.
I mean, we said it like it may depend on the population. I'm not sure really.
Well, but I mean, like, where do you get it from?
I mean, it was said by CA, to be honest.
So we used one of my old studies in Chicago, which was the state of preference mode choice survey that had microtransit, fictional transit, and I think you could walk to work, so who knows. Estimate the choice model, assuming constant marginal sensitivities. And the alpha parameter is just the beta parameter in front of the cost term. So how sensitive people are to monetary costs.
So it depends on how many alternatives you have and
it shouldn't. I mean, it certainly depends on the individuals that are getting surveyed. Most likely it's not a fixed parameter across the population. I think we model it as a random parameter.
That's why I was so it's the first time I heard about this concept, and it's very powerful, I think, but I was curious just to know where did you retrieve it from?
Yeah, for the choice model.
Right.
So if you look at the logic model maximum expected utility, there is one term, 1 upon mu. So this is basically that term.
Yeah, no, it's really nice model.
Do you have any other question?
Yeah, I have two questions. So yeah, I should ask it from Dr. Island. So I mean, if we use the Bayesian optimization, we should assume that the small increase in subsidy will also provide a small increase in mobility, right? I mean, if it's just too large, the model wouldn't work properly, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, because I mean, my understanding from Bayesian is just we have to assume that this small increase or decrease in subsidy or your excess, you know, your inputs will also do this a small increase on outputs, right? So in reality, if we do a lot, it wouldn't work, right?
So how Bayesian optimization work is that it constructs an acquisition function.
Yeah.
And it optimizes that acquisition function to the next point to explore. The next point being the decision variable values. And the output is the subsidy and the mobility log sum. So it is not really fixed that you have to do a small increase in subsidy and small increase in mobility log sum, because it will search that space.
Yeah, because I mean, I use the Bayesian like in my context, well, my context was different with just EV charging, you know, like people choosing like program charging, right? And I mean, so I like if I change the like price a little bit,
what kind of
if you
acquisition
change the
function
whole
do you use?
people's choices, the model wouldn't work. I mean, basically it couldn't optimize it. So that's why I thought like in the Bayesian, you should always assume that, I mean, we have to assume that a small increase in the input also produce a small increase in the output or decrease in the output. So it shouldn't be like big changes or changing the whole decision.
What acquisition function did you use?
I mean, like based on different attributes. Like for example, just imagine we have a price, right?
Did you have a
If you just-
small object? I mean, a single objective or multiple objective?
I mean, even if we single objective, right? So I mean, just to predict the people's choices of choosing that specific program like attributes. I mean, because the price was so important, when I changed the price a little bit, so since it changed the whole decision, the Bayesian didn't work, at least in my case, I assume, because it just creates a lot of changes the whole output. That's why the Bayesian doesn't work. So so anyway, so the second question was, I mean, so did you also try the other optimization? Like, I mean, why use like simulation like to find all the like I see, I don't know what's called, it's like a grid search, like you search all the combination to see like which one is the best.
So as I mentioned, the objective comes from the simulation and you do not have the functional form. And Bayesian is used that way.
Because I still could do the combination of all these, like all your input to see which one is the best, right? Just
would you like to?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we don't do grid search, it's too expensive to evaluate the simulation function.
Because that was so big.
So the point of Bayesian is to be intelligent about which parts of the space you're searching.
Thank you.
Can I have a question? So do you have any criteria for deciding 5 clusters?
What, sorry?
5 of the cluster, like there, the reason why you choose number of clusters having.
So there is a formula which is kind of a thumb rule for choosing the number of clusters when you do k-means clustering.
Yeah.
Because you cannot choose a lot of clusters when you do not have a lot of data points.
Yeah.
So if you like put the number of data points you have in that formula, it will tell you the optimal number of clusters you need to have.
Can I see the result of the cluster presentation? Can I see the slide?
For that function.
Why the cluster 3, so at the point of like a 7,000 and 1800 point, why these cluster 3 is kind of separated from the other cluster 3s?
Which one, sorry?
The cluster 3, I guess.
Cluster
The
3?
point at like a 7,000 and 1800. Yeah.
Cluster 2 or cluster 3?
I think the red one, like cluster 3, I guess.
Cluster 3?
Yeah. So the point at the 7,000 and 1800. 7,000.
Cluster 3 is here, right?
Yeah, but I mentioned is the like at the point of 7,000 and 1800.
It might not see the numbers in his computer.
I will ask next time. So because the thing is that I feel like only this point is kind of separate from the other clusters.
So you mean this one?
Yeah.
This one?
The previous one.
This one?
Yeah.
It's cluster 1 actually.
It's kind of yellow, orange.
Obvious points, but
Also, the screen is sometimes color doesn't show up exactly right.
and I have lived a conflict.
Yeah,
It's
all
more
those things.
difficult for me.
Yeah.
I think it's pain.
Right, so that's the question.
That's why I said, yeah, just.
Hey, can I provide some quick feedback?
Sure.
So first of all, I think this is really cool because growing up, I used to take public transportation a lot. And the most difficult part is from your doorstep to get to like the bus stop, for example. And so if you can summon someone to come pick you up and take you to the subway station, that's awesome. And if there's not much of an increase in the cost and the fix, then why not, right? That would be excellent for cities to be able to adopt something like this. The other thing is I was thinking if you can maybe partner with companies like Uber or Lyft or whatever, where it doesn't have to be the transportation authority that purchases all these vehicles and trains drivers. Maybe they do, but they also supplement it with like Uber and Lyft. So kind of a combination there, but ultimately, I think it's a great addition to.
I mean, like, if you go to catch a flight, you do not need to take a car. If you go to train station, you do not need to take your car and park there.
Exactly.
It's awful, right?
Yeah, so hopefully we'll adopt something like this. Great work.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, maybe this is more on the policy side, like, just if you have considered it, when you talk about subsidy, like, are you always talking about subsidizing directly to the company or subsidizing, through the users?
So the system is operated by the transit agencies. And it is totally transit agency operated system. So so transit agencies are government run. So the subsidy.
Yeah, but what I mean is like in the end, it's always like you're simply injecting money, right? So you can do that by directly allocating this money to the companies and saying, I'm gonna cover your costs.
Oh,
Or-
if we go for some collaboration with the
Well,
private companies.
I'm just curious about the, human behavior. When you say something expected that you're subsidized, maybe you are more likely to take this, right? Like,
I mean,
if
that
you're an
would-
Uber and you say, oh, this is gonna be 20 bucks, but for whatever reason now it's 10, I'm gonna take it. So-
Yeah, if you have more subsidy, then it will reflect in the fare, right?
Yeah.
So that would be an incentive to you.
Yeah, I was just asking if you've considered like giving this information or, translating this information to the user. For them to know that it's actually like, this is not the cost, the city paying for it and you're benefiting about it, so please use it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that would be a good idea, but
That's interesting.
yeah, I mean.
I mean, after the system gets going though, usually getting enough people in one ride is not an issue because the subsidy is so large. So, yeah.
Isn't the subsidy, sometimes run like, $30, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, so. To your point about like, this would be nice, yeah, but it's really expensive to operate. So like, if LA Metro subsidizes these micro transit trips, at one point it was up to $45 per trip. It's closer to like, I think, 35. It's a big subsidy.
It would be good taking it over, saying a price of $50 and just paying $1.
$2.50.
Yeah.
I think for comparison, the subsidy for like riding on a bus is like what, $3 or something.
It depends on where you're
Yeah,
at.
sure, yeah. It's like an order of magnitude different.
The Irvine shuttle is, yeah, it's also very high. Do you think about the other question?
I do have a few questions, I don't know whether we have time, so I can ask after.
Maybe pick your best one.
Okay, I do have a great presentation, by the way. I do have a question regarding slide 7. Yeah, so if I understand correctly, during the whole simulation, you just like change the micro transit, you don't change any other modes, right? So like you keep the travel distance and travel fare for car driving, for transit, and the other modes like fixed. So I'm wondering, like, is that possible to create a multi-mode like model, like mode choice model? So you can consider people will walk from door to micro transit stops, and then take the micro transit to the like fixed route transit, and also like probably some like walking up. Is that possible to combine?
Yeah, I mean, you are basically talking about more, to adding more to the more chess model.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can.
Or nested like.
What is it?
So like nested like more choice model.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
have like
yeah.
public transport, but also like only public transport, but public transport plus like.
Yeah, maybe biking or walking.
Yeah,
like
plus biking, etc.
Yes. Are we ready? All right, so you can, as you can see, we have some food. I'd like to take a moment to personally thank everyone who participated today as speakers. These are from me to you, so just stop by here on your way to the food. Just a thank you from me for everything that you do. So thank you, students, thank you, audience, and let's have some lunch.